On this episode of the Dynasty Bell Cows, I am joined once again by Kyle. He's making his triumphant return to the podcast, and the fantasy football season is over, and now the regular season is over too. It's currently Black Monday as far as coaches goes. Coaches are getting their decision as to whether they're fired or they're staying around next year, and we have playoffs to look forward to. So we got a lot in store for you guys, and we are back and looking forward to taking this deep dive with you guys and just go over everything really that happened this season. So Kyle, without further ado, do you want to say a little hello?
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back.
It has been a while, but it's good to be back. All right, so our plan for the first segment, at least, we can go over some coaching changes since that's a little bit more pressing and on the headlines. And the first real shock, I think, and I think there was really only a couple shocks. The main shock, as we were discussing pre-show, was the fact that Brian Flores, the coach of the Dolphins, who, by the way, they had won 8 out of their last 9 regular season games, and now he's fired after starting 1-7 and turning the ship around. Just like that, he's gone. What do you think about this, Kyle?
I mean, I was literally shocked. I thought, like, when I got the little text from Sleep or whatever, I thought I must have been, I was like, am I thinking of the wrong coach? Did they fire an assistant or something? Like, I just couldn't believe it. I mean, this is a guy that took over a really struggling franchise from, Gates a couple years ago, and they've been competitive and they played tough football within my opinion, not a whole lot of talent, you
Mhm.
had basically almost an entire missed season out of Tua last year, that kind of, stunted his development a little bit, and he really started playing better in the second half of the year. He was also missing games this year too. So, there hasn't been a really ton of talent there. When you're starting guys like Miles Gaskins and, Duke Johnson, and, who else did they really have on offense? That's why you saw Waddle
Waddle.
have a, yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. That's why I think you've seen we can get into him in a second, but you saw basically a rookie having to have a 100 catch performance season,
Mhm.
just for them to even be relative. I don't think that's really a realistic, team perspective to have a coach that, fired when they're actually winning football games when you're literally relying on a 22-year-old player to shoulder all the entire load.
Mhm. And they did not just put together 2 back-to-back winning seasons. They went 10
Right.
and 7, 10 and 6, and now 9 and 8, and they were on the fringe of the playoffs both times. I think we'd be honestly having a different conversation had Flores led them to the playoffs either one of those seasons, but you still gotta look at the business as the fact that this is a business where your job is to get wins, and he got wins despite the circumstance, which was terrible. And if I'm a head coach, I don't really want to go into that Miami situation. So it's hard to argue that you're going to get a better coach than Brian Flores.
Yeah, it's shocking, honestly. Like I really can't even think of one good reason because it's not a situation to where this team is looking like it needs to turn around and rebuild. They got a lot of young pieces and they have draft capital. It's they're not in bad shape of improving their rosters, in the next year or so. So and you should logically think that some of these players might take the next level, take their game to the next level. So,
Mhm.
you know, I don't get it. We're gonna talk about some of these other coaches coming up that those were no brainers, and but
Yeah.
this team actually looked like it had a good future. And as far as fantasy spin on it, I really you can see stuff like that when teams make moves like this that are kind of questionable. And then it really sets a program back. You bring in a bad coach, and this team might be rebuilding in the next year or two. So, just something to keep in mind.
Mhm. A question has to be asked too. It's like, was his foot already halfway out the door? Like when they were 1-7, what were they really expecting from him? Because if he can finish that strong, then that says to me they already made their decision that
Yeah.
Brian Flores is gone. Because I mean, to win and go 8-1 and even beat Bill Belichick and the Patriots, which is impressive. I know he has experience under Belichick's belt, but to be able to beat Bill Belichick is pretty impressive, especially the way they went out this season. They look really, really good. So that was definitely impressive for me. So let's move on now to the next coach, and this one isn't as much of a surprise. It's Vic Fangio from the Denver Broncos, and this was kind of expected, wouldn't you say so, Kyle?
Yeah, but again, this is kind of a situation where are you really penalizing the coach necessarily? Because the team played pretty well. They played good defense. They were able to run the ball. That there was, they were competitive against really good teams. Teams that were playoff teams. They were in a lot of those games and competing against them. Are you penalizing the coach for the general manager's fault? Because
Mhm.
they've been trying for 2 years to bring in quarterbacks and try to force Drew Lock in there. They brought in, was it Flacco a year ago or something?
Yeah.
Then they throw in Teddy Bridgewater. I mean, to me, this is I think I don't think this is a no brainer. I think that I think this coach could have been successful and could have succeeded. You're basically one quarterback away from at least picking up 2 or 3 more wins and being in the playoffs. So
Mhm.
to me, I think this is another bad move.
Mhm. Well, the one thing that both of these coaches have in common so far is it's both of these well, I mean, yeah, both of these teams that are definitely looking to like rebuild at the quarterback position, get a new quarterback into play. Well, not necessarily Tua, but like neither one of these quarterback positions in like general was that great with Tua or Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater. So are you really saying that you want a coach who can develop a quarterback? Because if that's the case, then like I think a lot of coaches and teams are going to shift towards wanting an offensive minded coach, which really at the end of the day, it's like we've seen offensive coordinators fail to develop quarterbacks too. You can't put the blame
Right.
on a coach for not developing quarterback, especially if it's like a defensive coach and Vic Fangio was a defensive coach and Brian Flores was a defensive coach and their defense did just fine. So as far as like you're getting what you hired, you can't expect necessarily the quarterback position to be great one when you have put like little to no thought into it.
Well, and one more factor, I just thought of is, this team was already sending the messages that they're really not a competitor when they moved off of Von Miller
Mhm.
midway through the season. So Von
Yeah.
Miller was clearly their best player on that team. I
Mhm.
mean, hands down. And so, like when you ship off a player like that, I mean, you're now taking another player. I mean, that Von Miller, I don't know if he's in the prime of his career, due to injuries, but like that's definitely like you're not sending the right message to your locker room. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
If that makes any sense? Like that's a kind of a deflating move when you literally ship off your captain in the middle of the season. So I don't know. I'm not sure what's going on in Denver. I think it's another
Well,
kind of
mhm. Yeah, well, we don't know all the details. For all we know, they could have been coaches that weren't like within the locker room. Like we just don't know the whole picture. Like Robert Saleh and Dan Campbell, yeah, their teams weren't that great, but they were really liked in the locker room, and that was kind of what helped them get that second year too. And I just don't know if like with those results, you have to be liked. And another guy that might not have been liked a ton was Mike Zimmer because they did not give him the vote of confidence either in Minnesota. He was another coach let go today. Kind of expected, but another one that kind of is like, does he necessarily deserve to be fired? I don't know. What do you think, Kyle?
no. I don't think he was meant to be. That's another team, that I think if a couple. I mean, I think that game against the Detroit Lions is probably what got him fired. That implosion
True.
against Detroit a few weeks ago. But if they win that game, they're right in the playoff hunt. You know,
Mhm.
how many good coaches like coaches that have like that you feel like you could come in and actually get a turn team in from a losing team into a playoff team are going to be walking in the door. How many? All these coaches are getting fired on these rosters when they're like middle level tier. Here's a news flash, people. If you're 500, that basically means you're average with the rest of the league, right? So essentially, you know what I mean? So like that doesn't mean you're a below average coach. So
Mhm.
where are these coaches going to be coming from?
Mhm.
Like, are they going to bring them out of college? Are you going to be bringing an assistant from another good team? How many times have we seen assistants from good coaching staffs go and they completely fall on their face? We see it
Mhm.
time after time. To me with Zimmer, you had good play. The defense was kind of depleted, at times in the year, but the team was playing pretty good ball. Kirk Cousins had his best year ever this year. You know, So, and Dalvin Cook gets hurt a little bit here and there, misses some time
Expected.
again. Right, again, but they had good performances by Madison. This is a team that showed that they didn't give up and they kept on working. I don't think you should move on from coaches when that's the case. So
Mhm.
I think a lot of these firings were not called
Questionable.
for. Yeah, and I think that some of these teams are going to, it might work out for one of them, and two or three of them, it probably won't. They'll probably be rebuilding in the next couple of years, and that coach will
Mhm.
be fired too.
Yeah. One thing definitely that's different with Mike Zimmer than the other two coaches in particular is the fact that this is actually a guy who's led his team to the playoff
Yeah,
consistently. And I know they've been squeaking in there as a 5-6 seed, but like a couple years ago, they went all the way to the NFC Championship with newsflash, like you said, with a guy named Case Keenum, and they had Sam Bradford and Teddy Bridgewater there, and like they were switching through a couple different quarterbacks, and all of them were doing great. And Kirk Cousins comes over, and he does great too. So it's like this guy definitely has a feel for the offense and has put together some decent defenses as well. So I agree with you. I don't think you're going to get any better options if anything, this is really bad for the franchise because now it's like you're going to be looking at a couple years down the line where you're going to be able to compete because this kind of was your competing phase. Don't get me wrong, they were a middle tier team, but with Kirk Cousins, how long can he sustain this level of play? Is he ever going to get better? I mean, Justin Jefferson, he's a bright star, but
I
we'll
don't know.
see.
Kirk Cousins, he got better this year, in my opinion. I mean, he was on fire for a long time, and
Hmm.
he threw very few picks this year, and that's been a big knock on Cousins throughout the years. He's thrown big picks, and this
Hmm.
year I don't think he could have done much better with the talent around him. And
Hmm.
it is the defense. The defense needed to get better, and that's stuff that you can, in my opinion, you can change and turn around in a year or two. Because you get some young players out of the draft, and all of a sudden, I feel like personally, this is my philosophy. I think that it's easier to draft defensive players and develop them within a year or two because you know
Yeah.
they're still relatively healthy, young, explosive.
Hmm.
Offensive players take time. It's a timing, or it takes a lot of sequencing. Everybody has to be on the same page. And it takes continuity. The best offensive line aren't
Hmm.
necessarily offensive lines that have the best offensive players on the line. It's teams that have guys that have played together for years and understand like
True.
how they move. So
Uh-huh.
I think it's hard. Same with a receiver. No matter how good a receiver is, he's got to be on the same page with his quarterback. So defense is not like that really. Defense is, you're it's reactionary. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's that speed really matters a lot, and just being more athletically gifted a lot of times can just allow you to win on defense.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's a great point that you raised there. Let's move on to, I think, another one of the firings, one of the last ones we're going to discuss. And this happened for both the general manager, just like in the Viking situation, and the coach. Matt Nagy gone, and so is their GM now, Ryan Pace. And this is coming off of a few years ago when they won Coach of the Year and the Executive of the Year, respectively, which it was even surprising to hear that they did so well a few years ago. But I know this is the one that you definitely agree with.
Yeah, definitely agree with this one. Like, to me, this is going to sound kind of bad, but to me, like Nagy's been fired since halfway through the year. Like,
Oh yeah.
I haven't even felt like he's been there.
Uh-huh.
Because we've been hearing about this for so long. Like when I heard that he actually got fired, I'm like, oh, he's still on the team. I thought he was gone like weeks ago.
Yeah.
you know, it was just a matter of time. I mean, this offense, from the year that they had the double doink, it's just been completely a regression. And I don't know what the heck happened to Allen Robinson this year, but I don't understand how you can't get him the ball. I don't understand.
Unbelievable.
Fields. I don't understand how you're starting Andy Dalton over Fields from the like
Hmm.
all those. I don't understand it. There's a lot of things that just didn't make sense from the get go. And
Hmm.
talking about, you said it earlier, this guy was supposed to be the guru of like the Kansas City offense. He was offensive coordinator for Kansas City, I believe, right? A few years ago. He was
Yeah.
supposed to come in and be the offensive coordinator genius. And look exactly what happened. The team
Nope.
got worse and worse every year. You know,
Hmm.
and that he did the same thing with
Trubisky was
Trubisky.
actually decent when he
Yeah, as
came
I
there.
say, you take out Trubisky and you put in Nick Foles. When they had a winning record at that point,
Hmm.
and Nick Foles ended up, Nick Foles ended up. You knew he wasn't the answer very shortly into the season. Like you stood that he didn't have that magic that he had when he was in
Mhm.
Philly. So like I don't know. I don't understand. Like there's a lot of questionable decisions he's made through the years. So
And it's not like one of those things too. It's not like, this Nick Foles is a guy who consistently he's actually had opportunities to shine prior to Chicago, but yet he's never able to elevate past that backup quarterback position, even after winning really uh Super Bowl. Like he hasn't really been that great outside of that, and outside of
right.
Tom Brady, of course. So it's not like a big surprise too that this guy isn't really doing it for them. So that was definitely questionable. And as you said, Justin Fields, that whole situation was questionable because I remember like going into this offseason and going into this draft, we were thinking, well, it would be great. The Bears really need a quarterback. But like for some reason, everyone kind of thought, oh, they might not get quarterback. They'll be a little bit later in the draft. Well, they actually trade up to go get a quarterback. And everyone says it's a great move, but here they are. They're giving up like 2, 3 firsts. Like at that time, I feel like both Nagy and the general manager knew that they were basically done for, and we're trying to make a Hail Mary heave. And when you make a Hail Mary heave like that, and to not start Justin Fields week 1, it's super puzzling. Like this is the guy that you traded up years for, and you barely use him, and you show almost no trust in him until like midway through the season.
Yeah. Well, then they went back to Dalton too at the end of the year.
Yes,
It's like,
exactly.
we don't know necessarily the health of Fields towards
He was a little
you
bit
know
yeah.
And that was one of my biggest concerns about Fields coming out of college. As we said all offseason last year. To me, I don't. Fields had the highest upside as far as fantasy in all these guys, but I don't. I think he plays kind of reckless with his body at times, and I don't think he has the frame to sustain that long term. So that's my only question is Fields going to be the next RG3 at this point? Where you see a ton of talent. You knew he
Mhm.
was a
Agreed.
transcendent player in college. And it shows flashes. But I'm not sure if Fields is going to be the guy there long term either. Now that all these coaches are gone.
It's gonna be difficult because now he's going into year 2, a year wasted basically, and he's got to go through this new system with whoever they decide to hire. So it's got to be a really smart hire. I know everyone's going to be going after the guy, like on the name right now in Tampa Bay, their offensive coordinator. He is definitely going to be someone everyone's trying to target because. But then again, it's like, do we even know this guy's going to work? He just dealt with Tom Brady for 2 years. So you don't
Yeah.
know if it's like a given formula for success. And one of the teams that probably had a similar train of thought as far as this was the Giants. And they decided, you know what? We had a terrible year, but we're going to give Joe Judge another chance. And then their GM, Dave Gettleman, probably avoiding to be fired, he decides to retire. So now Joe Judge is coming back with some confidence behind that ownership, and we'll have to see what happens. What do you think?
I'm not that optimistic about the Giants.
Mhm.
They've been going in the wrong direction for a long time.
Mhm.
And
It's puzzling.
Gettleman leaving, I think that definitely has to help. Anybody all of the Giants fans that I've heard, there nobody like Gettleman there. So
Nobody. Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
so Daniel Jones. I mean, I don't think Daniel Jones was worthy of that high of a franchise pick. I mean, so
no.
I think he's probably an average quarterback and should have a job somewhere. But I don't think
Mhm.
you're necessarily winning football games with him. And Saquon
Mhm.
Barkley, I don't know what the heck happened with him this year. Like, I don't know if if his knees are bad, and this is like
Mhm.
another Todd Gurley scenario,
Mhm.
but he doesn't look like a 24-year-old anymore. you
No.
know,
No, he doesn't.
I remember I traded him from, it all last year when he was injured in all my leagues, and I went out and trade for him again this year. It, I keep on thinking I'm buying low, and I'm just now starting to wonder. I'm like, oh man, would
You're
I
buying
even?
high.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm starting to think like, man, if I could just get a early first round pick, I might just move on.
Yeah, I can't blame you.
But then I look at his player card. I'm like, oh, he's 24. I can't do that.
Yeah. Guy who got so much work in college, and he was like, at that time, he was like, I can't miss talent. But because of all that workload and everything, like Todd Gurley, like boom, he's like goes in there, has a great year, gets injured, and now he just really can't stay on the field. And now you can tell, like he's had his wear and tear on him already at this point in his career.
Yeah, I tell you, there was a couple years ago I was looking at, and I started looking at stuff. I'm like, I started looking at like all these guys when they were like, top 10 running backs.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it seemed like whenever any of these guys get hurt, they're just never the same. Like they start
Dalvin
getting
Cook.
nicked.
Dalvin Cook somehow he's the outlier.
Yeah, he's pretty much the outlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, but a lot of these guys, I don't know. It used to be like, well, these guys would stay healthy and then they would get hurt later in their careers, and then they were just kind of old anyway. But like, they're getting hurt younger and younger, and they're, that Todd Gurley, I tell you, that really just if you can see a guy that's completely fall off the face of the earth at age 24, 25 years old, Todd Gurley was on that 2-year stretch before that was as good as any running back I've ever seen.
Yeah,
he was
amazing.
And they didn't even use him in that playoffs, and you just knew it was a red flag.
Mm-hmm.
And he just was never the same running back. And you see it time and time again, and
yeah, it was like such an instant moment. Like 1 second, he's like the best running back in the league. The next second, he's like not even on their team for the Super Bowl.
Yeah. I think with Barkley, I really hope they bring in somebody that can resurrect Kirk. I mean, I can't tell you. Saquon Barkley is my most rostered player of all my teams, like by far.
But they spent a second round pick, the second overall pick to get him. They spent a number 6 overall pick to get Daniel Jones. So this is once again like showing you that Dave Gettleman just didn't really know what he's doing. So like, while I don't like Joe Judge, it's like it's hard to blame him. Like, you're dealt with the running back who looks like he's 30 years old, actually 24 years old, and you're dealt with the quarterback who should have been a like second round pick, but ended up being like a franchise quarterback based on where they picked him. And it's like, now you're forced to develop. Like, you spent such a high pick and such high draft capital. So like, now you're backed into a corner. And he went into that situation, obviously. Well, I don't even know. Like, this was a guy that was clearly not a lot of people had interest in going to that coaching opening when it first opened up, because Joe Judge here, he's like a unknown special teams coach from the Patriots. And they go ahead and they give this guy a shot. And we're like, well, what are they doing here? And obviously, like, he wouldn't have gotten an opportunity anywhere else, but it now makes me want to think, like, did no one else want that opening to where Joe Judge was their top option? Or is it really just ownership going after this like unknown guys?
Yeah, but to me, this is like, we're seeing now multiple years of failure, and the grass is always greener, I guess, and they learned their lesson from the last coach, they had, but so it's not necessarily always the coach. I tell you, the front offices in football matter so much more than people probably realize. It's not just drafting. It's talking about everything from the facilities to the training staff, to just everything. I mean, literally, running a football team,
the organization.
It has nothing. It has probably as much to do with the coherence of the front office and stuff like that. It does as much as the players. Because think about it. Even the worst teams almost ever in history, they almost never go on. They almost always beat somebody in a year. You know what I mean?
That's true.
So the talent levels of the best team and the worst team in the league is probably not that extreme, as much as people would think, and, and one players definitely don't usually transform a franchise, you know what I mean? Except for guys like Brady, some of the elite guys, yeah. I mean, you got to be like literally like all pro players to, in my opinion, to make a huge difference over like, an average player. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, because let's be real. If guys can't play football, they're out of league, and they don't get to the league, and then they're out of league if they can't play. You lose one step, you're out. It doesn't matter who your name is. So like, I think that these front offices, people just fail to realize, and there's reasons why teams are just perennial bad. For years and years and years. It's because they're not making the right moves.
And a lot of times we consistently see teams where it's like, this, like, all the teams that do really good, like the Belichick's and the Tomlins and all those guys, like, they consistently do good. You don't see a lot of young coaches really be able to sustain success. Like, you see Matt Nagy have this great year, his first year, like, then things fall apart. And maybe it's just the hope in him and the new hope that team has. Like, look, we get a new coach. But like, when the coaching actually comes into effect, years 2, 3, 4, then it's when it falls apart. Same thing with Kevin Stefanski. It's like everyone was so excited. Baker Mayfield looked okay. I mean, he didn't look great. And yet everyone was like saying he got coach of the year, and then 1 year later he's fallen apart. And Sean McVay had that really great first year and hasn't really been quite the same. And like you can make the argument this season they didn't do a great job developing Matthew Stafford, because Matthew Stafford came in, he looked like an MVP quarterback. His last five games, he's probably thrown more interceptions than touchdowns. He can't beat the 49ers. I mean, he's looked just awful, honestly. So it's like all these coaches, like you need time to be able to develop also. Like that's the counter argument to
Well,
that. It's like
I mean, there's a really probably good explanation why
the
Matt Stafford
experienced
started.
coaches get it done.
You know, if you're a defense and you want to pick off Matt Stafford, all you gotta do is put a guy in front of Cooper Kupp because that's the only person he throws the ball to.
Mhm. Well, you see it too. Yeah, it's like
That's
exactly
all
like,
you gotta do to stand in front of him. You're gonna get an interception.
and it took to like week 11 for teams to figure that out. But it's like it's not a coincidence that these guys with Matthew Stafford have these amazing years, because 2012 Calvin Johnson, an otherworldly talent, he got like 2,000 yards and almost, and now Cooper Kupp gets almost 2,000 yards. Those are the two highest seasons ever for a receiver, and both of them was when Matthew Stafford was throwing to them. So maybe Matthew Stafford's just that guy who finds that good receiver and locks onto him. Maybe that's why he's never been able to succeed.
You know, one thing to
Maybe
not
like,
underestimate, though, you know, Robert Woods is that exact time span
oh,
you're
it
talking
was
about. Though,
terrible. Yeah, he
you
needs
know,
a number two, and Odell Beckham's decent,
yeah,
but
you know,
no,
so
no
that's
Robert Woods.
that I think that loss had hurt him a lot because, like I said, they become a much more predictable team without Robert Woods on the field.
Mhm. All right, let's move on to the next portion of the podcast episode. And so we got, I mean, yesterday I couldn't believe these games. I mean, you have maybe the greatest ending of all time for regular season game. I mean, I can't think of like a better stakes. Like you win, you're in, you lose, you're out. But if you tie, you both make it and another team gets screwed. And yet it came down to the final 3 seconds of overtime before we had any clue of what was going to happen. Like it was like up in the air the entire time. The Chargers broke the record for the most amount of fourth downs ever completed in the game, converted like 7 or 8 fourth downs. Like there were like, at least like 15 times that we thought the game was over, and yet it wasn't. And it's like this game was an unbelievable ending to a great season. But that just goes to show you like how many teams are in the middle tier this season, that like it would all come down to something like that. Like there were so many possibilities up in there. And even like the Steelers made the playoffs, they won in overtime, you know? So it was like all these teams, and it was just a battle. So what was your main takeaway, I guess, from this weekend, or what was something interesting you found, Kyle?
The Colts suck.
The Colts. Yeah, it sucks to be the Colts right now. You know, I had a Steelers fan, and he's like, you know, I think the Jaguars are going to actually be able to beat the Colts because the Colts have never won in Jacksonville for like 5 years. I'm like, oh, well, this Colts team, this is a team that's actually had the number one defense the entire year. They were absolutely amazing defensively. They have Michael Pittman, like a top 10 receiver, arguably, and they have Jonathan Taylor. All they need is for Carson Wentz to get the job done, and he's a much better quarterback than Trevor Lawrence right now. And then boom, they're in, and they need to win one of the next 2 games too. But yeah, they just can't get it done. So baffling.
You know, I'm honestly that's why I say that to me that was the biggest shocker because I'm just speechless. You know,
Yeah, it's
like
hard to
I could
fathom.
have believed that Houston
Clearly,
beat.
this wasn't a playoff. We
I would
thought
have
it was,
I would
but it
have guessed
wasn't.
that Houston had a better chance at beating Tennessee than the Colts losing because at least
Oh yeah,
Tennessee, like you know, you know
for
they're
sure.
like there's no emergency for them to win. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
They have a little incentive, but you know teams don't play like they were. Man, when you're desperate and you can't beat the Jaguars after the season they just had,
Yeah, it's
I mean, it really
shocking.
you know, and they lost to the Raiders the same way. You know,
And that was without Darren Waller.
you know, I don't know. I just, you know, this year has been so strange. You know,
It's been a
it
tale of
kind of
three quarters, like 3 or 4 quarters, right? You have the first 4 weeks, you have weeks 5 through 8, weeks 9 through 12, and then like weeks 13 to now. And it's like even in fantasy football, it's like the teams that were great in certain stretches of times, like all of a sudden 4 weeks later, and they're done, and it's because like all these teams, everything's shifting around constantly this season. You could never really get a feel with like COVID and everything too, and all these
Oh
injuries,
yeah, it's
like we've never
awful.
seen before. It's like teams were like the teams we knew and we loved and we thought were contenders, no longer. And now there's new teams coming up, like the Chiefs, for example. Like the Chiefs, that first quarter, they were terrible. But yet each quarter after that, it was like a new elevated Chiefs team until the point where they were now. And like the Steelers too, like the first quarter, they were terrible. That second quarter of the season, they were really good. And they did okay the third quarter, and then they came together at the end of the fourth quarter. But it's like all these teams, like consistently, like they've been a hot mess the whole season. Like we're starting at the beginning of the season. I know I'm dragging on a little bit here, but I mean, the teams that were 3-0, the Panthers, the Broncos, the Raiders, like those were and the Cardinals, like those were the last teams to go undefeated. And yet here we are, and they all had a meltdown. It's like
Yeah.
baffling.
Well, to me, the Cardinals, you can really just lump up. They lost Watts earlier in this year, and they lose Hopkins.
Well, it's injuries too. Yeah, that plays a big part of why we're seeing this.
So Hopkins, like that with that. Speaking of Arizona, like in particular, like Hopkins, you really saw Murray kind of struggle down the stretch. And I tell you, I'm starting to get a little nervous from a fantasy dynasty perspective on Kyler a little bit. It's 2 years now where
Really?
he's been
Okay.
banged up. Yeah, I am. I
Yeah,
tell you, he was
fair.
basically. I thought you could easily put him as QB1 coming into the year. I
Mhm.
didn't think he was that much far off from Patrick Mahomes.
Oh
And
yeah.
and I think he still can actually put up more points than Mahomes, like because of his rushing ability, in given games.
Mhm.
But like I'm starting to get worried because like he's just his size is really starting to make me nervous about him getting injured and start losing a step. Because if he's not available to me at the end of the year when I'm in my playoffs, then it doesn't really help me. If he's not playing great at the end of the year, if he's not putting up 30 plus points for me, at
Mhm.
the end of the year, then I mean I can get that same type of production out of guys like Mac Jones. I'm not joking. I'm being dead
Yeah.
serious. Derek
Well,
Carr.
we were high on Mac Jones.
Yeah, we were. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And but you can get the thing about it is, you guys like Mac Jones, you're going to sell it because he doesn't have a
Mhm.
high ceiling. You know what I mean? But he can get
Exactly.
30 points.
Mhm.
He can get 20 to 30 points. He did that, a bunch of times this year. He's just not really consistent yet. But like if you could turn around and trade Kyle Murray and get, a guy that is going to have a long leash, he's going to have a starting job and he's going to be a relatively, safe player. And you could probably get the moon for Kyler Murray right now. You know what I
For
mean?
sure. Mhm.
Multiple picks on top of Mac Jones. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah.
And so,
Well,
that's
he
the
has
type
the
of way,
rushing ability too that makes him like super high
right? But
ceiling.
if he's not available, or
Healthy.
if he stops running because he keeps on getting hurt,
Mhm.
then all of a sudden he's more of he's basically like Russell Wilson is now.
Mhm. Well, it's a trap we keep falling into as fantasy owners. It's like
We do.
we see the production, but what we forget is to like we have to value this injury factor. Like we just have to. Like we should not be surprised at this point that Dalvin Cook's getting injured. That should not be he's been injured every single season for a couple of games. And that I mean, that was something that I was saying a little bit before the season. Why I mean, I just don't like Dalvin Cook, and I know he comes back and he plays well, but you don't want a running back who's going to only be productive for like half the season for you. And same thing with Christian McCaffrey. I know like he's the number one consistent number one pick as a running back, and we were both saying this, but we should have realized, he's going to get injured again. It's Christian McCaffrey. It's going to happen, and he did. And Chuba Hubbard, there goes his opportunity. He did okay, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, I tell you one guy. If we're going to kind of transition to that, one guy that I think that I'm actually going to be getting out on this year is because everybody still loves him and everybody still. I keep on hearing everybody calling him. He's a top 5 running back. And I tell you, if we keep on learning, so what we're saying is we're seeing trends of stuff, right? And we're not paying attention to it until it's too late, until the market corrects itself, right?
Yeah.
DeAndre Swift, in my opinion, is not a top 5 running back.
Yes. Oh, he's
if you can get out on Swift right now and get a top 5 value,
you have
get out on him immediately. Because what have they shown us? They went out and got Jamal Williams. They used Jamal Williams until Jamal Williams got hurt. So he's not getting the feature role. He's in a bad offense. his body type, and he keeps on getting hurt. This is 2 years now in a row that he's getting hurt. So we love him because he's a great receiver,
I
you
agree.
know, but how many times do we got to learn our lesson with these running backs? And we're paying, all we're doing is we're paying for their age. We're paying because he's young.
Doesn't
what I mean?
matter if we don't get the production anyway, too, right? Like, I mean, there's guys like, they're a lot older, but yet they look a lot younger on the field. Like Ezekiel Elliott, Ezekiel Elliott looks like he's 35 out there sometimes, So
Well, we also saw, that's another lesson. We saw tons of guys that literally were written off for dead in the community. I mean, completely. They were. I remember one day, and I looked down at my trade offer, or at somebody a trade offer, at somebody sent it. I guess I didn't cancel it or whatever. I got somebody in the middle of the season sent me James Conner for a 3rd round rookie pick.
oh my.
You know what I mean? He already had like 10 touchdowns on the season. I was like, click. But look at you.
Top 10 running back right there. Top 5 in touchdowns.
Freeman, Freeman came absolutely out of nowhere, and he was a startable player down the stretch for Baltimore. Now he doesn't have value going forward, but
far. But like it's like
Connor, really, who had more fantasy points down the stretch? DeAndre Swift or Freeman?
Well, one guy played and one guy didn't.
So I'm right. But that's kind of my point, though. Nobody's going to give you. You can go out and get. I saw Cordell Patterson at his hype, like literally at his hype, and Freeman get traded for a 2nd round pick, just 1 2nd round pick. To a contending team. Like, so the second was even late. So like that's what you can acquire these young, damaged running backs. Not young, but like these older damaged running backs for.
I gotta disagree a little bit with Devonta Freeman, though. I'm
not saying he's good. I'm just saying it's. I'm just a guy example where you can steal production
old. at. Oh yeah,
you can steal production. Who was it? Fournette till he got hurt. What was he? He was a top 5 running back this year. You could have got him for nothing this year. Even guys like Singletary. Nobody was trading for Singletary halfway through the year. He had a great stretch down the side. So these are guys that like people. I don't know, for one reason or another, that we're just so ready to get out on players. We're so ready to overpay for youth. I don't mind overpaying for guys when they're actually like young and producing, but we haven't really seen DeAndre Swift produce at that Kamara CMC level. We haven't even seen him be a workhorse for a year. You know what I mean? And so like, to me, that's, if you can turn around and flip Swift and get a Kamara plus, because somebody's like, oh, I want the young player. I want the young up and coming player. I'm doing that at like 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's a great point they make. But I would definitely agree with that. But I'm going to go back into what happened this week on a different note. Let's talk about the 49ers, because the 49ers, and I'll be honest, like I came into the season, I'm like, I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs. Like I'm looking at those teams in the division. I don't think they necessarily can. Like Kyle Shanahan hasn't really been able to put it together without Jimmy Garoppolo. If they give this guy Trey Lance a shot, it's like they're not really necessarily going to be a playoff contender. But I did say, like, going into the season, I'm pretty sure I said on podcast, I'm like, I don't think Trey Lance I don't think he should be starting this year. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is the better quarterback. I know you trade up all that capital for him, which I thought was a terrible move. But I think that Jimmy Garoppolo, if he stays healthy, he's consistently been able to win games. And he consistently has done it here. Like this guy, for me, I think right now, if he stays healthy, he's a franchise quarterback. Like he can win games for whatever team he needs to. He's not going to be great. But yet again, he did lead his team to the Super Bowl a couple years ago. And like at the quarterback position, well, like he's helping like Deebo Samuel and George Kittle have great games. And you can run the ball and have confidence in him that he's going to take enough attention off of the defense. Like this to me was a great testament to the value of Jimmy Garoppolo. And when the whole world is against him, the whole world, literally like from the beginning of the season, everyone's like, Trey Lance is their guy. You're gone, Jimmy Garoppolo. There was no love for Jimmy Garoppolo. And he still goes out there and balls, despite the whole world telling him basically that he sucks and the pressure is on. Like for a guy to be able to do that, to me, shows tremendous props. And for them to be able to bounce back, they won the game against the Rams. They won in overtime. I mean, I think like for me, Jimmy Garoppolo is got to be in the comeback year of player of the year discussion if it weren't for Joe Burrow.
Or I mean, Dak Prescott too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, here's let me throw out another narrative out for you. Okay.
Mhm.
We'll play a little devil's advocate. Can you name me the last quarterback that sat on the bench the entire season under a quarterback that was essentially even having an MVP type of caliber season for a team that was a playoff team, and the guy played one game only because the basically the season their playoffs were already locked to where they were at? Can you name that player?
Aaron Rodgers?
Hello?
Yeah.
Sorry, you just cut out for a second.
Oh, okay. Aaron Rodgers.
Nope.
I'm just gonna let you go on.
Patrick Mahomes.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Alex Smith. You know, Alex Smith had the highest completion rate that year. Their team was one of the best teams in the NFL. And yet, for some reason, they still went out and got Patrick Mahomes, traded up to get him at 6.
Yeah.
You know, and that's how you knew that Patrick Mahomes was going to be a special guy, or that Andy Reid was going to be out of a job, or, you know, that whole organization, you know. So when teams, I still think it was a great move, because guess what? Jimmy Garoppolo did get hurt this year. And that's always been the knock on him. It's not been, can he win a football game? It's been, he can't stay healthy when they need him the most.
That's fair.
And so now you got that insurance plan. Lance gets to sit for a year and learn. And yet it's not even like, imagine how much money they would have had to put in to bring in a good enough backup that, like, in case Garoppolo would have got hurt again. You know what I mean? So yeah, you're spending those future picks, but you get to save all that cap money from not spending $10 million on like an Andy Dalton, or, you know what I mean? Or somebody, like, you know, somebody along that lines, you know what I mean? Or what those backup quarterbacks cost. I mean, so like, you don't necessarily want a guy like Andy Dalton behind Jimmy Garoppolo, you know what I mean? But a guy like Trey Lance, you know, you get to develop them, and you have a high ceiling. You know what I mean?
True.
That's why
a great situation.
You make the move. Because if you're a good football team like the 49ers are, like Kansas City was, you don't get a chance to get a good quarterback very often. You know, those guys are going to the absolute worst teams usually. You know what I mean? Now you might have a chance to get guys like Fields, or, you know, some of those other guys that go a little bit later in the first round. A lot of times those guys don't pan out. You know, once you get outside like the top 5, I've seen a study. I can't remember it off the top of my head.
Okay. Yeah.
But the miss rate on quarterbacks like that aren't drafted in like the top 5 picks is like really, it's like a high bust rate. You know what I mean? And so you have your Lamar Jacksons, and, you know, you have certain guys like that. But once you guys, if you're not drafted in like the top, I think no, it's top 10. If you're not drafted in the top 10 of the NFL draft, you know what I mean? You have a very, it's basically like flipping a coin.
Well, let's be honest here. And I mean, if we want to go down this route, it's like, if we look at all the number 1 picks, we look at all these top 10 guys. Like, I mean, Lamar Jackson, he's a guy that comes to my mind. Who is it? Deshaun Watson, I think he was outside the top 10. Like, we actually have had good guys, and here we are. Like, teams are trading up for Mitchell Trubisky and Carson Wentz and Jared Goff. Like, all these guys, and Sam Darnold. Like, every team, they're trading up because they think, you know, if we don't go up and get a guy really high, that we're not gonna, because of the analytics, that we're not gonna be able to win. But yet this guy might be available 10 picks later, and yet it's still the same guy. So like, if we're arguing from that perspective, it's like,
well, I think there's a difference
the pick
when a good
matters.
football team does it. You know what I mean? That's, to me, that's the difference. You know, you trade up and you trade all those assets when you're a bad football team. That's like basically 4 holes you can't plug with those picks. You know what I mean?
Mac Jones. I mean, we look at Mac Jones.
Good football team though. I mean, that's what I'm saying. That's the difference.
Yeah. Well,
you put Mac Jones on a bad football team, I promise you, he's gonna look real bad.
I disagree about that.
Is it possible that you're higher on Mac Jones than I am now? I never thought it'd be the case.
Hey, I was also the one who recommended the Patriots go get Mac Jones in like February, January, like right after the like this time last year. So
hold on a second. Sorry, my headphones were coming off.
All right, no worries.
Yeah. No, I mean, there is nobody I didn't hear any single podcast fantasy wise that were talking Mac Jones as high as we were last year. I mean, we definitely got some ones wrong. We got some ones wrong, like Terrence Marshall. It's looking not very good.
Yeah, Kadarius Toney.
Kadarius Toney
He
splash.
can play, but he's injured. Yeah.
Yeah, he's injured. But to be honest, at this point though, I've seen enough out of Tony with his antics. If somebody's would be willing to give me a first round pick, I'm taking it in this class. Even maybe a couple seconds to be honest with you, because I'll just cash out at the profit margin that we were getting them at. But Kadarius Toney wasn't costing us high picks. I mean, that's the thing. We get him late second, third round even sometimes, which was it's insane. But
that's true.
But Mac Jones, again, I was getting Mac Jones in some of the leagues I got him in the second round in Superflex league, like 12-man Superflex. Like, so he's going outside top 12 in some leagues I was in. Here we were literally from the first podcast we were doing it before any of the NFL draft or any stuff, before we knew it, we both said that we thought he had a chance to be one of the best quarterbacks in the class. Given the landing spot, if he lands in a place where he is good coaching staff. You know what I mean?
That's true.
And that's exactly what happened. And people hated Mac Jones for rookie drafts. They hated him.
Well, I mean, it was a valid reason. The reasoning was still there on their side. It's like, this guy's not going to be able to put up fantasy stats, and he really didn't do great fantasy stats, but he was such a good football player that at some point you could rely on the consistency there at least.
If you look at his stats, I'll tell you, I got him in some leagues. I tell you, if you look at it, it's like every other game. He's putting up like 25 points.
I believe it.
But it's every other game right now. All he has to do is just develop it, But again, I can't expect a guy to not only be really good, but to be consistent as a rookie. Let's not forget how bad the Patriots offense was last year. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and all those free agents they brought in, they didn't really do like
anything really. Well, not super surprising. I mean, those guys weren't big names; they were just paying a lot.
I don't know. I thought John New and Hunter Henry were both going to have pretty good years.
Oh, I like those guys, but yeah.
Can you understand how John New's production fell off as bad as it did?
Oh, I can't. Like, these guys look like very similar prospects. And if anything, I thought Hunter Henry was going to be the 1A guy. That's why I drafted him in our dynasty league. But like,
but it's like, you don't want
Johnny Smith was like right there. No, I want Hunter Henry. Yeah, I like him. Solid tight end. He's top 3, top 4 this season. Maybe like he might have actually been maybe number 1 in as far as like touchdowns, just touchdowns, receiving touchdowns. He got like 10 or 11 receiving touchdowns, and like that chemistry is just gonna grow there the more they go. And they always like those tight ends in that system. So that'll be interesting.
Yeah, he's always scored touchdowns too. Like when he was in San Diego, even in his injury plague years, when he didn't have a ton of receptions and stuff, he always scored touchdowns. I mean,
and even that's what you want with tight ends at this point. That's really all you want, and they're gonna.
Well, I want my 100 catch guys.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're elite. They're elite of the elite, right?
He's still young enough. Maybe he can get there. It's not like there's a ton of competition for touches. So.
Yeah. So. All right. Well, before we let this podcast come to the close, we got the playoffs coming up. I mean, all right, what's like an honest Super Bowl prediction, and what's like a dark horse Super Bowl prediction for you? And it's hard to say. I'll start first. And I'll say that I've been all over the map when it's come this season. I thought at first been like, with as much talent as the Rams have, they should be able to get it done. But them having a 17-0 lead against the 49ers and then going on to blow it, like I don't think they're going to get it done in the NFC. And I think at this point, the way the Packers are playing, they're going to be pretty tough to beat. And I think the Chiefs, the way they're playing, I know it's a very vanilla like prediction right now, but I think that's kind of going to be how it goes. And I think the only reason why the Buccaneers, I think they're not going to be able to win this year is because their defense is kind of fallen off a little bit since last year. Like they had like the best defense in the league last year, and they had Tom Brady. Whereas this year they have Tom Brady, but they don't necessarily have that defense too. So I think they're definitely beatable, and they almost lost last playoffs too.
Yeah, and Tampa Bay too. This drama with Antonio Brown just keeps on going and going too. That's not.
Jets made him retire. Jets ended his career.
Who?
Jets.
The Jets
ended his career. Let's face it.
Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
Did y'all sign him or something?
No, I said they ended his career.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Antonio Brown. I mean, he was still producing, this year, but he's not worth it. I'm telling you, he's not
Oh
worth
yeah.
it to any football. I tell you, I cut him. I literally cut him in every single league I had him in. I don't even care if he signs with anybody else. I
That's
don't.
true.
I mean, I had him playing in a championship league, right?
Hmm.
And he he just uh he just walks off the field. I mean, like, how can I win my championship? Which I did win the championship, but how do I win a championship when my receiver just walks off the field and quits?
Yeah.
Like, I don't care. I will never play. I will never feel comfortable playing him in a game ever
Again.
again.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to trade you anything for him.
Uh,
I moved on. I dropped him for
yeah.
Antone Wesley or whatever his name is. Like,
Yeah.
I
From the
I
Cardinals.
dropped him for 4-string receivers.
Mhm.
I wanted him off my roster. I'm done with Antonio Brown.
A
So
little bit
I
of
think that,
drama.
I'll be honest with you. I wouldn't be surprised if Tampa. If you want a hot take, I wouldn't be surprised if Tampa Bay gets busted out first round.
Eagles. I mean, that's fair.
Just anybody, like,
Yeah. Anyone could. Yeah.
like the Jets almost beat Tampa Bay 2 weeks
They
ago. I
almost
mean,
did.
they should have. They should have really.
Yeah, if they ran the right play. Which discussion for another time. Going back to the Adam Gase era, it feels like the same traps over and over again, but
It's not the same.
it's a little bit different. Well, I mean, we don't have Gase. That's the real difference.
Yeah, and but so Tampa Bay, there's chinks in that
Mhm.
armor. I mean, you can see the storyline, and I'm not saying they will get busted up, but I could definitely see it happen. I won't be that
Mhm.
surprised if they lose first round, honestly,
Mhm.
with all the stuff going on. And yeah, if I had to probably put my money on a team, it would probably be the Packers. Like,
Yeah.
right now they're
Packers
the
and who
betting favorite.
else in
Yeah,
the
right now,
AFC?
ASC. Can my dark horse and my pick still be the same one and the same?
Yeah, sure. Go for it. I know what you're gonna say.
Yeah,
When
Bengals,
Vegas
baby.
is riding on it, you gotta go with it.
Yeah, so I mean, no, but I'm being serious. If you watch that Chiefs game the other day, so you would normally say it's the Chiefs, right?
Mhm.
Like, I mean, that's got to be the favorite out of the
Yeah.
AFC right now, right?
Well, I mean,
Like,
I went with the two favorites, like because
yeah,
most
I
of the
mean,
time we don't see many upsets in the playoffs. Let's be honest. So yeah.
yeah, I mean, a lot of times you do kind of know who the best teams are, but you never know
Mhm.
what's going to happen. But I'm talking about just a team that, like, people who are playing the best ball right now. And I'm telling you, when I was watching which, by the way, I thought that was the best game I've seen all season, was that Kansas City Cincinnati game 2 weeks ago.
Oh, it was
Hey,
a great game.
and Cincinnati is like,
Not as good as the Chargers and Raiders. It was a good game.
yeah. Well, I don't know,
Hard
man.
to argue.
That whole going forward on fourth down like 3 times in a row, when all they
7
needed to
times. It was like 7 times.
No, I'm talking about the Bengals at
Oh.
the goal
Oh
line,
yeah,
like,
they did
against the
it too.
Chiefs.
Yeah.
They're like,
Yeah,
"No,
they
we
did
ain't
it too.
taking no field goal. We're not putting Patrick Mahomes on the field with a minute
Uh-huh.
left." So, which, you might start seeing more teams do that nowadays.
Mhm.
Than putting Patrick Mahomes or Brady. How many times we got to see Brady and Wilson and Aaron Rodgers, and how many times we got to see those guys go down in a minute? Like, how many times
Yeah.
we got to see it?
Never gets
So,
old.
no, it doesn't. It's great. It makes for
Uh-huh.
phenomenal football. But so I think the Bengals are playing the best ball, because I saw them play the best team 2 weeks ago and thoroughly outplay them the second half.
Mhm.
They made the adjustments and they outplayed them.
Mhm.
And if it wasn't them, it'd be the easy cop outs, Kansas City. But I'm going for the team I want to root for. It's the Bengals, and that's more of a local team where I live at.
Mhm.
So people are hyped up, and I tell you, it's not just home or love on that either, too. It's like, they're playing good ball right now. They're a young up and coming team, and I tell you, one of the reasons I made that bet with Vegas, when I got 40-1 odds. So full
Mhm.
discretion, I bet them like week 9, I think it was. And so the reason why I did it, and I did not bet on a team like the Colts when they were at 50-1. And we were talking about this because I didn't believe Carson Wentz can win 4 games in a row. I think
True.
he can beat. I think he can beat any team out there.
They
I don't think he can
went.
win.
They were on what, like a 9 out of 11 games. They won like they were what, 1-4, and they, or something like crazy, and they won like 9 out of 11 games at one point. But
Yeah,
yeah.
I see him play too much bonehead football. When he was at the
Mhm.
Eagles, too much bonehead plays. When it comes down to it, he just makes bonehead plays. And and the difference is Burrow still makes some like bad throws here and there, but he's just he's fearless. You know,
Yeah.
and going back to his time at LSU, I mean, that Final Four game against Oklahoma, would he have like 8 touchdowns in like a first half of that Final Four?
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
was
this kid
amazing.
he just goes out and he balls everywhere he goes. You know,
It's
and
true.
you could see he didn't look like a rookie last year. I mean, that's why I
No.
was so high on him this year. Like he didn't look like a rookie last year. You know,
Mhm.
and
Same with
if it wasn't
Herbert, which we would have loved
right,
to see, but
right. I mean, it's very rare that you're going to see a guy that they can just take control of an offense on a bad team and just turn them all around, you know, and just
mhm,
be the faces of the NFL, not just their team, like the faces of NFL, you know.
mhm.
And so you know a guy like pretty early on, you know what I mean, when you see it. And I've seen it in Burrow, so I do believe that this guy
That's true.
has. I think he has the ability to lead a team to a Super Bowl. I really
I
do.
can see it. Yeah.
You know,
I
he's only
mean,
going to get better.
not many teams in the AFC that are really like, wow, this is the really good team. Bengals, honestly, are one of those teams.
Yeah, you know,
They can beat
one
the
thing that
Raiders, and then they can take it from there
a lot of people don't realize
if
though
they do.
too. You know, Burrow is not a young prospect, even though he's a second year
Mhm.
player. You know, I think he's already like 25 or 26 now.
True.
Like he spent like 5 years in college or you know, and he was
Developing.
right. Yeah, you know, so he's a lot more mature than you know a second
Mhm.
year player typically is. You know, he has the numbers speak for himself. He literally has the best numbers of all time in college football. You know, his
Yes.
offense was the best offense. Now look at the Bengals. They look like the best offense in the league now too, don't they? You know, when you got Tyler Boyd as a third option, you
It's
know, and
pretty
he's
good.
yeah, and you got literally probably the best receiver at 21 years old. I mean, the way I mean, would you take Cup over Chase in a redraft league next year?
Yes, I still would. I still would.
Yeah, but it's close, right? Like, and you know, one guy's gonna be 29, one guy's gonna be 22. So you know, Chase is
Yeah.
like it's
And one
Chase to
guy
the
has
moon.
gotten injured before, so
True. Yeah, and
for
you
a
know
whole
the other.
season.
And you know, T. Higgins, man, sometimes he turns into a little afterthought on that offense. But I tell
Mhm.
you, man, he would be the number one receiver on almost every team.
Exactly. Yes.
So that offense is looking awesome.
Mhm.
And you know, and we finally seen Mixon put together for a whole year.
Mhm.
You know, that's the first time in his whole entire career we could say he did it from like basically start to finish.
I
You know,
didn't believe in him. I was out on him, but here we
you
go.
know, I
Here we
was in
go.
on him. I was in on him, but I realized that like if he had another injury, you
It's
weren't
on.
even
It's
going to
done.
you weren't even going to get a first round pick for him. So that's why I kind of you know I had him in some leagues and I bought you know I
Mhm.
bought him for about a first round pick. But
Yeah.
I realized that I could lose my entire investment on him coming into the year. But I thought he was going to be reasonably good. But he's shown that he can still ball. You know, he's
Mhm.
still good running back that we thought he was. You know, and so I'm really excited about this. If you want me to take my pick, that's my dark throw, and it's who I'm
Mhm.
actually going to be going
So who's
with.
your dark horse in the NFC? And then I'll give you mine.
49ers.
Yeah. That's what I was
I
gonna
mean,
say. 49ers.
they're playing good ball now. You know, it's like
Mhm.
I like taking those hot teams. You know, teams that are playing good ball
Right now, yeah.
right now.
It's,
Yeah, I
it's
don't
been
care
a
what
right
you do.
now kind of season. It's been a right now kind of season. Not the
And
whole
in
season.
that case, if you know, we talked about this earlier. I say literally somebody's going to end up like eliminating some of these top teams though, because that's just how
Mhm.
the year has been.
Yes.
You know, I think you know who gets really interesting is Tennessee too, though.
That's what I'm thinking too.
You know, because if Derrick Henry, and this is the
Are
caveat
they
that
really
Derrick
a
Henry.
dark horse, or are they like a favorite at this point? Like when you have the bye, you're the only
Yeah,
team that
I
has a
mean,
bye,
it
and
doesn't
every
really
single
feel
team in
like
the
they're a
AFC
favorite.
besides Steelers. Yeah, it doesn't. So like I feel like they are a safe dark horse because not only the probabilities in their side, but they actually could really make some damage. Like we forget how good they were with Derrick Henry. Like teams
Well, and
in
Julio
the
Jones is
playoffs,
finally back too.
they've been known
If
to
Julio
run.
Jones actually comes back too, that's the other thing. If
Oh
Derrick
yeah.
Henry comes back, and Julio Jones is not dead, I'm telling you right now, he's not dead.
Hmm.
Okay, he's just been injured, and people are forgetting about him. But I'm telling you, if him and AJ Brown come back and are healthy, it's the same type of offense we thought they were going to be coming into the
Hmm.
year. You
Yeah.
know, but all of a sudden we're like, we just jump off of all these guys. You know,
Hmm. And then the
Tannehill can still
Patriots.
play.
Patriots are gonna be competitive too.
Yeah, I mean they're going to be competitive. We'll see. I mean, obviously, I mean that would be that'd be kind of fun to watch Belichick and Brady. I think we were joking about that like all year. You know, like it's gonna be Brady. You know, like
Mhm.
but like I
Could
don't know. I
happen.
mean, yeah, I mean Belichick's gonna be good. To me, I don't know. I don't really trust the Patriots that much. I don't know if that
It's
makes any
true.
sense. Like,
They're improving. That's fair. Hmm.
you know, they lost to some bad teams
Whereas like
late
the
in the year.
Titans and 49ers, they've kind of done it before. Like Titans were one game away before they made the playoffs last couple seasons. 49ers, they made the Super Bowl. Like they still have like some of the same bits of like the pieces that the teams are really competitive.
I mean,
Patriots not
I'd
so
feel a
much.
little bit. I'd feel a little bit better about the Patriots. Like, Damian Harrison's been banged up. Last month or
Harris.
so. Or Harris, yeah, I'm sorry. And
Yeah.
Ramondre Stevenson, when I was watching the game, he got
He's good.
absolutely. Oh, he's great, but he got clobber knocked. I don't even know if he's going to play next week. I mean,
we'll see.
They took him on the field. He looked like he could barely stand up. Like when I saw it.
Yeah, I mean they've been proven to succeed with multiple running backs. So Brandon Bolden,
I know,
we'll
but if those guys aren't at full health, I'm not sure that after those two guys, I think there's a big drop off.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So
that's true.
I really don't even know. Who were the other running backs? Because James White was hurt all year.
That's fair. That's fair.
The little other scat back, he didn't even play.
JJ Taylor, yeah,
he didn't even play all year. He was inactive. Yeah, he was inactive almost every game. So
wow.
I mean, I don't really know who they have behind those two guys, really.
That's true.
So, I don't know. I feel like they're. I don't know. I just don't feel like they're peaking right now. I feel like they peaked like mid-season.
Okay, yeah, that's true. That's true. They lost to the Dolphins.
And they lost to the Colts. That should tell you everything you need to know.
They lose to the Colts, they're in trouble.
All my Colts, man, all my Colts friends after that New England game, they're like, "Oh man, it's our year, it's our year." I'm like, "Nope." I'm like, that just shows you the Patriots are beatable.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's a good place to stop the podcast. Talking about some Super Bowl favorites. A great podcast.
Who you like in the game tonight?
Oh man, I gotta go with Bama, Alabama.
I'm taking the Dogs.
Yeah, I mean they've been hot. They've been hot. They've been playing some good ball. We'll see.
All right, brother. Well, it's good to see you, man. We'll have to definitely catch up more. And just for all the viewers, my schedule got really buckled down this year. We got real busy with the everything opening back up. So, I wasn't able to. First off, I wasn't able to watch a ton of football. Like enough to like where I had, done in past years. And so like I didn't want to like be giving hot takes, especially like stuff on, I didn't have enough time to catch up on the things and really dive into the analytics. With the off season stuff, I do have, I can do this stuff when we release these videos, a little bit like, they're not time sensitive to where you need to have all the information for the week. You know what I mean? And so we'll be able to do a lot more shows like coming up here. So just, thanks for bearing with us and checking back in on us. And, we're very happy to have you here, and we hope to give you some great content.
All right. Without further ado, that'll do it for this podcast episode. Till next one, everyone.